going on? Why is the timeline burning? Why are the executives of SM making think pieces on YouTube? I'm going to try and explain everything and deep dive into how many of these arguments are valid, if any, and how many of them are just propaganda.
That's my opinion!
Hi guys, Han here, and today we're doing something a bit out of the usual. Normally I do light-hearted K-pop and stan content. However, today there's something that has caught my fancy and I decided that I want to have a conversation with you guys about it. A lot of you are very confused and I feel like I'm actually in a unique position where I have enough information to be able to give a in-depth and hopefully informative opinion that will actually help you guys understand the situation. So, for those of you who don't know me, hi, my name is Han, my pronouns are they, them, and I have been a K-pop fan of some 15 years. Not only have I been a K-pop fan of 15 years, but I've actually been an SM Town artist stan for 8 of those 15 years. I was a TXT second gen K-pop stan, and I was crazy about all SM artists. I even have some merch on my wall behind me, and I was actually a fan back when TXT was still 5 people, so that should tell you something about my age. Not only that, I've since then spent 7 years as a big hit babe, as I like to call it, because I'm a big fan of BTS and TXT, as you can probably tell. I have actually spent a long time standing artists from both of these companies, which means I've seen how the companies run, and being a fan for so long, I've also seen how K-pop has changed throughout the many years. Not only that, but I've also worked in the K-pop industry directly until actually about 2 weeks ago when I quit my job. Those of you who follow me on Twitter know that I actually work as a marketer in the K-pop industry. I will make a disclaimer, I have never worked in an entertainment company, but I have worked with small entertainment companies, nothing to the level of SM or YG or any of that. But I've worked with entertainment companies, I've worked with artists, so I do have a bit of insider knowledge of how the industry as a whole runs, and I do also understand the base level business side of the industry as well. So I think with all that being said, I can kind of understand what is happening and hopefully put it into layman's terms for you guys in this video. So this video is going to be cut into 5 parts. The first part is going to be explaining what exactly is going on. Part 2 is going to be why the general K-pop audience is against HYBE acquiring SM. The third part is going to be what is the alternative. Part 4 is going to be looking at the CFO's official statement. This is actually what spurred this whole video into creation. And then lastly, we're going to talk about what I think is actually going to happen based on everything that we've talked about before that. So without further ado, this is going to be a very long one, so let's jump right into it. Pretty much for the last year, there has been this constant conversation about who will buy Isuman's shares of SM Entertainment. The reason this came into conversation is because Isuman has decided he wants to retire from the industry at the ripe old age of 70, however older he is, and whoever acquires that share, i.e. that portion of SM, will be the biggest decision maker in the SM board of directors. It has been this constant back and forth between HYBE and Kakao as to who will be the one to buy the shares, which would be the better fit for the company, which the company themselves wants to be acquired by, and who Isuman actually wants to sell to. Well, it was revealed on February 9th, just 11 days ago, that Isuman and HYBE had come to an agreement and HYBE would be purchasing Isuman's shares. And this seemingly came as a shock to the rest of SM's board of directors, i.e. the executives, the CEOs, etc., who are very against HYBE acquiring SM. Following the reveal, the CEO, Lee Sung-soo, came out on his personal YouTube channel, I believe, and made a however many minute think piece, basically slandering Isuman by claiming that he's done a lot of illegal activities, that he's embezzled funds for the company, that he's evaded tax, and that he is actually going into this deal with HYBE in order to kind of hide his paper trail right before he was about to be exposed by the rest of the board of directors who have been against him selling his shares from the very beginning. I'm not going to actually get into that today because I don't think it's actually conducive to the main point of this video, which is HYBE a good fit to acquire SM, which is the part I really want to focus on, because I think for the most of you guys watching, that's the part you care about as well. Which leads us to today, where the CFO, Jang Cho-hyuk, released a 15-minute YouTube video basically explaining why he thinks that HYBE's acquisition or HYBE's buying of Isuman's shares has basically been illegal, and why SM again are against this decision. And that video went up on the SM Town official channel, which I have many opinions about, but we'll get to that. Yeah, that's where we are right now. That is the very condensed version of what has happened. And now we're going to go further into the different arguments as to whether this is a good or a bad thing. I want to use this opportunity to say very openly from the beginning, I personally do not believe that HYBE acquiring SM is a good or a bad thing. I am very neutral in this whole situation. I do not have any loyalty to HYBE. I have many issues with many things that HYBE do, the way that many things are managed, and I have very long lasting scars from SM as well. So I really have no loyalty to either of these companies. Please do not watch this video thinking that just because I stand BTS and TXT now that I have deeper loyalty to HYBE. That is not the case. I'm just going to give you my honest opinion based on what I've experienced and what I've seen over the last few years. Why are people against, and when I say people I'm referring to the K-pop audience, K-pop fans, against HYBE acquiring SM? I think it could be broken down into three things. The first one is that they worried that HYBE will become a monopoly over the K-pop industry. The second thing is that they have seen HYBE's past acquisitions and they worried that SM will lose its autonomy and identity. And the third one is that they are worried that the SM artists will be neglected in favour of HYBE artists. So starting from point number one, a monopoly. I can't lie, this is for me the most annoying point that people make. This is the one thing that I'm like, you're using this word because it's a bad word, you saw it on Twitter, you ran with it and you thought this sounds good, I'm gonna use it, I'm just gonna run with this. Because the reality is, if you look at any other industry, nobody has had more of an oligopoly than the K-pop industry. An oligopoly is where a small group of companies have all the power within an industry. HYBE, even if they were to completely dissolve SM and merge SM into HYBE and SM was no more, would not become a monopoly in the K-pop industry because YG and JYP still exist. Mind you, this is not that. SM will still exist as its own company in its own right, even if HYBE buys Isuman shares. It just means that HYBE will have a say in the decisions that SM make. So the idea that HYBE will become a monopoly over the K-pop industry is simply unfounded. And also, if you do have a problem with one company having this much power, then you should have had a problem with SM for the last 30 years, because the K-pop industry has literally been the big three: SM, YG and JYP, ever since Sorteji and the Boys, which YG was literally a part of. So if you had a problem with there being such a collection of power in one place, that is all the more reason why SM's power needs to be distributed out of just SM. And people are also saying that they worry that HYBE will abuse their power, but again, SM is actually the one that has the long history of abusing their power in the industry. Again, being a TVXQ fan since before the breakup, I saw very much so how JYJ were barred from being on TV. So the idea that HYBE is going to abuse their power is quite hypocritical, if I'm honest. People are worried as well because HYBE is still a quite new company that we've recently seen their growth, and there's been this constant question of, are they going to exist after BTS has gone to the military? But I think we can already see now with how successful Seraphim and New Jeans are being. TXT have been literally just this month that HYBE has kind of solidified their place, and I think a lot of people were scared because they didn't think that was going to be possible. They really expected HYBE to crumble the second that BTS were not BTS anymore, and that hasn't happened now. And people were kind of like, oh, if they have the power that SM has, what else can they do? And I think they're not giving enough credence to who HYBE is as a company. Even if we look at their past acquisitions, which is going into the second point, they have not really stepped on the toes of the companies they've taken up. And I know, girlfriend fans, I hear you.
But we're not actually going to get into that today because I don't actually think it's relevant to the conversation we're having. I genuinely believe that HYBE gets a lot more blame for that situation than they should, and that Source Music is flying under the radar when they are actually far more involved.
Realistically, on the base level, HYBE has always said, and this is stated on their website as well, when they acquire other companies, the aim is not to completely rework the internal workings of those companies, change them into the HYBE way and just steal all their artists. They do actually leave those companies alone. And I think in order for you to understand why this happens, you need to understand what HYBE actually is as a company. And then another one people like to bring up as well is VLive, which is very frustrating because VLive was going out of business long before Weverse ever came to the picture. I cannot stress it enough. VLive was already on the way out. I've worked with people who used to work at VLive, and VLive was going under regardless. So yeah, based on their track record, HYBE have actually not got a track record of abusing their power over the subsidiaries or actually going in and making significant changes. Mind you, during an acquisition there usually will be at least a little bit of a change in terms of typically the workforce. They usually layoffs during acquisition because, I mean, for example, let's say Pledis has a production team and HYBE has a production team. They don't need two production teams, so they might decide to keep just the upper 10%, for example, that's just an arbitrary number, but they might keep the upper 10% of Pledis' production team and then fire the rest, and then they will then move and integrate into HYBE's production team, and they will be the middleman between the two companies so that there is a smooth flow of information and communication between the subsidiary and the company that acquired them. So the SM identity will not be going anywhere. So I think that that's another thing that people don't really need to worry about. I think you can honestly see that with groups like 17 who had long-standing careers before they were acquired by HYBE and still have a strong career now. I mean, there's a reason they all re-signed with their company just recently. So I think that point also goes hand in hand with the next one, which is the artist managed. People are very worried that SM artists will be neglected because they're not technically HYBE artists, because HYBE is not doing 100% acquisition of SM, they are buying a majority share. There probably will be a small element of, these are my children and these are the stepchildren, which is a bit harsh to say, but that also comes hand in hand with the fact that SM, if they want to keep the autonomy, they have to keep the responsibility for their artists. So they can't say, well, we don't want HYBE to come in and tell us what to do, but then we also want HYBE to be taking care of our artists. Like, you can't have your cake and eat it. You kind of have to pick what kind of balance you have. And also there is an element of, even if HYBE are not actively influencing any of the major decisions that are happening to SM artists, they do want them to be successful, because ultimately any profit they make is HYBE's profit. That's another thing people seem to misunderstand. It does not make sense for HYBE to invest all this money into buying SM with the hope of SM failing, because that means they do not get a return on their investment. These artists have to stay successful for HYBE's decision to buy SM to make sense. So the idea that HYBE would intentionally jeopardize SM artists or neglect SM artists in order to, I guess the mindset is that they want these artists who are popular to disappear so that their artists can be the only popular artists. But you have to also ask yourself, as a fan of an SM artist, are you going to go and stand BTS and TXT and SVT just because NCT are no longer around? For me personally, when I pick my artists, the style of music they make, the charm of the members, the individual style, the concepts all play a part into who I like and who I don't like. I won't like NCT just because BTS doesn't exist anymore, or vice versa. So this idea that, oh, if they get rid of SM artists, all those SM fans will become HYBE fans is just... On the flip side, I also want to say that SM has not necessarily got the best track record for artist management. Again, I bring up the fact that I am a TVXQ fan. Now, with all that being said, it's time for us to do the flip side and think about, what if SM was acquired by Kakao? Because I know we've all liked to scrutinise HYBE and be like, HYBE is the devil and everything they do is wrong and we all hate them because BTS is there. But I think it's also important that we understand that your enemy's enemy is not necessarily your friend. I feel like, actually, if you were to take the same arguments that K-pop fans as a general audience make against HYBE acquiring SM, a lot of them do actually hold up when you apply them to Kakao. And the reason I say this is because Kakao is so OP. Oh my goodness. Kakao is insanely powerful in Korea, and I think a lot of you guys don't realise how powerful they are because their sphere is still very much within the Korean space. But if you have ever been to Korea, you've ever lived in Korea for an extended period of time, you know that Kakao is integrated into every part of life. I think in the West, we're quite divided between Team Google and Team Apple. I know people who use Gmail for everything, Google Docs, Sheets, all that kind of stuff, Google Pay. Flip side, Apple Pay, Apple TV, Apple Music. We're all very much split between these two, or actually use a crossover of both of them. I cannot stress how much that is the same monopoly that is, or oligopoly, sorry, that is held between Naver and Kakao here in Korea. There is so much that is reliant on these two companies, and I think for a long time it was so integrated into our everyday lives that we did not really question it. I use Kakao Talk because it's more foreigner friendly than Naver is. If you don't speak Korean, you're gonna have a hard time with Naver, I'm completely honest. I do use Naver for a lot of shopping though. I use Kakao Taxi. I do not remember the last time I actually, you know, like held a taxi on the street. I use Kakao Taxi. I call them to me, they come, they take me where I'm going, I don't have to have a conversation. Kakao Bank is another big one, especially millennials and Gen Z these days. We don't like using centralized government banks and things like that. We're all about the decentralized online crypto, all that kind of stuff. And Kakao Bank is an online bank, it's not a physical bank. And a lot of the young generation tend to use Kakao Bank as opposed to, or in cohesion with, their regular banking systems. And people kind of didn't realize how reliant we were on Kakao until October of last year, so literally just like 4 months ago, where Kakao had a fire in their servers and the whole country went into complete and utter chaos. It was pandemonium because suddenly at 3 p.m. in the middle of the day, nothing is working. I cannot order food, I cannot order a taxi, I cannot go anywhere. I think I was sick with COVID this day. Oh, this is October 15th. It was the same day as the Busan concert. Yes, I was at home watching it on TV and I was trying to order food to watch during the show and I couldn't order anything. I was like, what is going on? Turned out I actually had COVID. That was also not fun. Imagine if I had COVID and I'm in quarantine and I can't order any food and I don't have any food in the fridge. Anyway, people were out at restaurants and could not pay for their food. There were restaurants who could not take payments from their customers because they used Kakao Pay for their business. Just complete and utter pandemonium because we could not do anything without our Kakao IDs working. Kakao is so integrated into all of our lives, and actually after this happened, mind you, it was only down for I think like 12 hours, there was an inspection by the government to say, what is going on? Is this okay? Like, can we actually allow our country to stay like this? Because the amount of things that did not work just because one company had a small fire, and I think the idea that HYBE has that much influence is just ludicrous at best. Like, HYBE is nothing compared to the Kakao empire, and you must remember that Kakao also do have influence in the music industry already, because Kakao M, now Kakao Entertainment, as of I think either late last year or early this year, actually has the licensing to hundreds of Korean artists. And I'm not talking just K-pop artists like IU, A-Pink, we're talking big name non-K-pop popular artists like Epic High. And this goes back to sometime early last year, I believe it was. It was either early last year or late 2021, I can't remember the exact time. But it was when Spotify was first introduced into Korea. Because Kakao Corp, which is Kakao M or Entertainment's parent company, so as Big Hit is to HYBE, Kakao M / Entertainment is to Kakao Corp, owns Melon Music. So Melon Music being Korea's #1 music listening platform, when Spotify came into Korea, they had been discussing the licensing rights for 1.5 years and they had failed to reach an agreement. Because of their failure to reach this agreement, Kakao decided they were going to pull all the music from all their artists off of Spotify. No forewarning to the artists, and I remember this because Epic High, a group that I really love, they released an album literally days before this happened. And can you imagine your fave just released a brand new album and for the first X amount of days you cannot listen to it? Because you have to remember, Melon is not in English. Even as a fluent Korean speaker, Melon is the most complicated, confusing thing I've ever seen. Like, hell, I went to Inkigayo last year for TXT and they wanted us to bring like our Melon downloads thing, and I was sitting there like, I'm trying to print 4 screenshots and I cannot even figure out where to get them from. It was very stressful. So just using Epic High as an example again, the majority of their fans are overseas. They're on tour right now. Could you imagine if all those people could not listen to their music 3 days after the album comes out? Like, that's ridiculous. And I want you to ask yourself, who was that decision for? Was that decision from Kakao to pull all that music in the artist's best interest? Was it in the fans' best interest? So if we're looking at this whole idea of HYBE is going to do what's in their best interest and they're going to neglect SM, they're going to neglect the SM's needs, the artist's needs, the fans' needs, has Kakao really shown on their track record that they're much better at taking care of their artists or taking care of their fans? Could they not have, for example, if they knew they were having this issue, bearing in mind this is 1.5 years into negotiations and they've yet to reach a decision, they know the launch date of Spotify is coming, they know what their action is going to be if they don't reach a decision before then, you think they would have told Epic High, hey guys, maybe you want to hold that album off for like another 2 weeks until we get this shit sorted? Fortunately, things were resolved in like a week, but the fact that it got to that point in the first place is, in my personal opinion, a bit crazy. So again, I asked you, between HYBE's track record and Kakao, which do you think is going to have the artists and the fans and the SMs as a company's interests in mind more? With that being said, we're going to now move into the next part, and probably the part that most of you guys are most interested in is why SM themselves do not want to be acquired by HYBE. And we're going to be talking about this in reference to the CFO, Chang Cho-hyuk's official statement that he released on YouTube today on SM's YouTube channel. First and foremost, the decision to upload it on SM's YouTube channel is questionable at best. In my personal opinion, it is incredibly unprofessional. Bearing in mind, even if you wanted to upload your statement in video form, SM has a website. Why YouTube? For me, that's a very strange choice to make, and it does not look good for the leader of a company, a top executive, to be uploading his think piece on YouTube. I don't think that's going to give the remaining shareholders any confidence, which is not going to fare well for SM, which once again brings up the question of, is this really in SM's best interest? Just starting with the title. What was the title? The reason why SM is against HYBE's hostile takeover. Already, from the title, who is SM? And I know I've been using the phrase SM to refer to the company as a whole up until this point, but now we're talking about opinions, and a company is not a person, so a company cannot have an opinion. So this has to be specific people within SM that we are talking about. Who are these people? As the intro of this video will have you believe, these people are the co-CEOs, the executives, the shareholders, the employees, the artists, and the fans. Those are the people that were specifically named by the CFO in this video. However, I have some questions as to, are we really sure this opinion piece is really the voice of all those people mentioned? Because as far as I'm aware, none of the fans were asked about their opinion before this video went out, but I digress. Also, the use of the phrase hostile takeover.
Actually, the point I wanted to make here kind of got a bit muddled when I was recording, so I just wanted to reiterate what I was trying to say. Hostile takeover is a business term, and I'll put the definition on screen because I feel like I'm going to butcher it if I try and say it out loud. However, bearing in mind, and I'll talk about this a bit later, the fact that they uploaded this video on YouTube, they are not targeting people who are aware of the definition of this term. They are targeting the general audience. I really believe this video is for the fans, and the reality is that the majority of fans are not going to understand business specific terminology. So I feel like it's very calculated to use terminology that to the layman does not seem like terminology and will be taken a specific way. And mind you, it does have a negative connotation even within the business industry, but I feel like it's really forcing people to feel like HYBE are the aggressors in this situation and SM are the victims, where it's not really that black and white.
And I think that already, just from the title alone, you are encouraging the people reading it to have a certain opinion and to feel a certain way before they've even heard the argument that you're about to make. So already from the get-go, they are telling you, are you team HYBE, the aggressor, or are you team SM, the victim? Also, I must say, you might say, well, SM has every right to be against HYBE taking over the company. And to be honest, I agree with you. They do have every right to feel that way. However, this video is not explaining a balanced argument. At no point in the video do they ever point out a single positive that could come of HYBE becoming a majority shareholder. I do not believe that there are no benefits personally. However, they have said during the video that they will later talk to you about why they think Kakao is a better fit. Basically already telling you that these are all the reasons why you should be anti-HYBE in this video. They're going to let that stew first, and then later they're going to, once you've already agreed that HYBE is the worst decision and therefore Kakao by default must be better, they're then going to go and butter you up as to why Kakao is actually better, which, as we've just discussed, may not necessarily be the case. So already from the title, there's so much going on. There's also the timing of everything that's happened. In the beginning of the video, the CFO points out the fact that SM announced that they wanted to go into their SM 3.0 new system, bloody blah, on February 3rd. And then HYBE and Isuman came out on February 9th saying, hey, we've sorted out the whole acquisition thing, we're selling the stocks, we're buying the shares, it's all good. And they're like, it's so calculated that they decided to do this now, right before we were about to expose Isuman, right after we announced SM 3.0. And my question would be, when you are in the middle of this deal, mind you, this has been going on for months at this point, the whole Kakao HYBE back and forth, Isuman wanting to share him stocks thing, them threatening to expose Isuman for all his dirty deeds, why would you announce SM 3.0 now, of all times? Is that really where your priority should be laid? In the midst of everything else that's going on? In my personal opinion, I think the timing is intentional on both parts. I think SM knew what they were doing. I think Isuman knew what he was doing, choosing to sell now. And they're also kind of implying that Isuman intentionally sold his stocks now, right after the SM 3.0 thing was kind of announced as coming up or coming soon, in order to wash his hands of everything as soon as possible and overshadow the SM 3.0, because the way that SM 3.0 is presented in this video, as it's presented as if once you know what SM 3.0 is, you're going to be so for everything that we're doing, you're going to be so team SM that you're going to bleed pink. They're basically playing it as if Isuman has known this and intentionally done this deal now in order to hamper that sort of support, which time will tell, I suppose. I also think SM kind of made a bit of a slip up in the introduction, because I think they said this as a look how ambitious and how big a dream we have, but they said in the beginning of the video that they want to become the #1 entertainment company in the world. I think they actually kind of showed their cards a little bit too quickly here, because they unintentionally admitted in the introduction to this video that a big reason they don't want HYBE to acquire the larger shares in SM is because they don't want to lose that title, essentially. Up until present day, as far as I'm aware, SM is still technically the biggest K-pop company in the industry. If they are acquired, that would mean that any achievement that SM have moving forward now becomes HYBE's achievement. And that means that this grandeur goal of being the #1 entertainment company or K-pop entertainment company or whatever it was in the world is no longer feasible. So I do think there's actually a level of company pride, and he was even saying like all the executives, all the artists, all the 600 employees who've worked towards this goal together. I feel like, is this whole thing a pride issue? Like, is it really for the betterment of the company, or is it because you want SM to be the #1? He then goes on to talk about the money that HYBE spent in order to acquire SM, and how they currently have just bought 14.8% of the shares, but have already expressed a long-term plan to buy 40% of the shares by I think around March. And they've highlighted the fact that they borrowed 1 trillion won, which I will put the exchange rate up here because I can't be able to do that right now. They took out a short-term loan in order to acquire SM and to fulfill this goal of acquiring 40% of SM's. So, face value, that seems insane. Oh my god, they take out this much money in loan. Actually, the loan is not for the full amount. It said they took out a loan in order to make up the amount. As far as I'm aware, we don't actually know how much of a loan HYBE took. It just means that they don't have the money right now, but they are willing to invest that amount of money in what they believe will be a return on their investment. Going back to what I said about SM artists need to be successful for this to be worth HYBE's while. And I have to also say, the idea that taking out a loan to make an investment is such a scandalous thing is just also very laughable to anybody who understands business. It's very common. They're taking out this loan because they believe they will make this money back and it will be worth it in the long run. So it's not a huge risk for them to take out a short-term loan. Also implies that they're sure they will be able to pay it back quickly as well, which is also something that was slightly glossed over. And the CFO also said that he felt like HYBE did not do their due diligence in terms of actually assessing whether SM was worth investing this much into, which is a kind of backhanded way of saying that SM might not be worth that much money, which is kind of weird when you're trying to protect the pride of your company, to say, actually, we're not worth a 1 trillion won, so why would you spend that on us? Very interesting argument. But he also said it feels as if HYBE did not even address their own board of directors before they made the decision. And my question would be, how would you know that? Bear in mind, this has been in discussion for months and months and months. There's no, as far as I'm aware, evidence to say that HYBE has not already spoken to their board of directors about this. And as the CFO, as far as I'm aware, is not a member of HYBE's board of directors, I don't know how he would know this information. If anything, if we're going to go there, if anyone does not have a hold on their board of directors, it seems to be SM, because EC Man managed to go and make this deal without you guys knowing and being none the wiser. So maybe you should be worried about your board of directors before you worry about HYBE. So the next thing he does is he actually goes into breaking down what his main arguments are as to why HYBE should not be allowed to buy the majority shares of SM, especially because they are competitors, and this is going to come up a lot. The first thing he says is that the optimal releases for any one entertainment company, or any one company, is the exact wording, sorry, is 100 albums / debuts per year. My question is, firstly, where does this number come from? Or who decided that the optimal was 100 per year? And secondly, HYBE is not doing that much, like really and truly. HYBE debuted 2 girl groups last year, and 1 boy group if we count N-Team or A-Team or whatever they're called. Even if we look at HYBE's biggest player, BTS, what did BTS do last year? They released Proof, BTS Best of BTS, whatever it was, the Japanese album. They released Jack in the Box, Indigo, and The Astronaut. 5 music projects last year, 3 debuts last year. If we look at TXT, they did Miniso 2 and they did Good Boy Gone Bad Japanese version. Even if we add all the HYBE artists and all the SM artists together, I do not think we're going to be anywhere near to even 50 albums a year, talk less 100 albums a year. And I should hope not, because I don't know about you, but I like my artists to sleep, I like them to eat, I like them to rest, I like them to be healthy, happy, living their best lives, not just slaving away in the studio trying to produce new music because I can't wait more than 3 months for a new album. That's insane to me. Like, you should be very concerned if you want your artists to be releasing 4 albums a year. Relax, okay? Let them relax, if anything. That's a very strange statement to me, to think that you would even infer that you want that to be the case, that there's 100 releases happening every year anyway, or that they would get anything close to that. His next point was this whole thing about fan platform. Basically, if HYBE buy the majority of SM's shares, SM artists will be expected to use Weverse to communicate with their fans and this, that, the other, and SM will lose out on their opportunity to build their own platform. I'm not sure if SM has a platform already that they're trying to like build up. I'm only familiar with Universe and Weverse, and I've only ever used Weverse. My question is, do we need another platform? Do we even need Universe and Weverse? Like, obviously they have different artists, but if all these artists could all be in one place, is there actually need for us to have all these different K-pop platforms? You might say, as an argument for that, is that, well, different platforms will offer different features, and that creates improvement and innovation, which is a fair point. But then also, if you have all these same minds making that content in one company, making it together, I do feel like, why not have one really good platform instead of lots of kind of good platforms? And mind you, that is not by any means to say that Weverse is a great platform. I have many a bone to pick with Weverse and Weverse Shop. Nothing is perfect in this world, that's all I can say. My point is that, who is the platform actually there to benefit? They're kind of wishy-washy with the argument as to whether this is for the betterment of SM as a company or the artists and the fans. And I think they're doing that intentionally, because the minute they separate, majority of the people in this group do not care about the company. That's the reality. Most of us do not like our companies. I know very few SM fans who've ever been happy with the way that SM has been run in any capacity. So if they really hone in on what's beneficial for SM, they know they're going to lose a lot of the audience, which is why they keep bringing up the artists and the fans. But really, what do the artists and fans benefit from having a separate platform to Weverse? Why can they not just use Weverse? And if SM is so concerned about losing out on potential profit by not having their own platform, why not shift gears and focus on monetizing content on Weverse? Weverse has the ability for you to sell content, for you to sell merchandise. So why not focus on optimizing that and making the most revenue you can from there? And that will be where your revenue is coming from, rather than having your own unique platform. Maybe it won't be as much revenue, but it's still a revenue earning opportunity if that's what you're really concerned about. So again, this is a kind of a weak argument as to why SM and HYBE cannot work in harmony, which and they use that word synergies because it sounds impressive. Again, buzzwords. Really what it is trying to do is to alienate the people who can see past the BS, and they're really playing into the perceived ignorance of their audience and counting on nobody to really call things out. They also brought up the whole monopoly thing as well, like, again, using buzzwords, using things they know their audience are already saying, but then actually look past the numbers for a second and actually look at what this information is. Read the fine text that is actually on the presentation, because this says these are the companies as of February 10th, 2022. So this is a year ago, right before COVID restrictions were lifted in Korea and concerts started to be a thing again. They decided to take stats from the top X% of companies, I don't know the exact number, but companies who are earning over 50 billion Korean won. I don't even need to Google this to know that that is not the majority of K-pop companies. So already we're looking at a very small group. Bearing in mind, a lot of companies saw a dip in their earnings during the COVID period because concerts are K-pop artists' biggest earners, and if you can't have a concert, then you're not going to earn as much money. So if we're looking at a period where companies cannot earn as much, then we're then taking only the people who actually still manage to maintain their earnings, which are going to be the big companies. So it's going to be the big four. I am including HYBE there. The big four is going to be companies like P Nation, maybe companies like Cube, maybe Starship. The upper echelon of companies with really popular artists are the ones who probably would have been able to maintain that 50 billion figure that they've gone for. But then if you actually look at the period they're comparing, they're looking at Q3 of last year. Q3 being the summer season. That is July, August, September. This is where most of the artists from these companies will be touring, which means they will be making the most money they could possibly make. And that includes HYBE's artists as well. I'm pretty sure SVT were on tour last year. I know TXT was on tour last year. This was when BTS had their ticketing for Busan, even though the concert wasn't until October. So that would have been a period where HYBE was making a lot of money and where SM themselves were making a lot of money. And mind you, remember this number they're showing you is the combination of HYBE and SM's earnings from that period last year. So they're saying this is what HYBE would have earned. But here's the thing, we didn't actually know how much either of those companies earned. For that first number, it says 66%. What if 50% of that was already HYBE? 16 of it was SM. Then what's the big deal in HYBE taking that difference? It's very much catered to look a specific way, and it's also presented as if this is HYBE's potential share of the entire K-pop industry. But mind you, like I just said, we just took a section of the top, we skimmed off the top of the K-pop industry and said what percentage of that could HYBE potentially own. We're not actually looking at an image of the entire K-pop industry. This is not 66% of the whole industry. This is not 89% of the whole industry. This is 89% of the top of the industry, including SM. Again, what are these numbers actually saying? Not a whole lot of anything, if I'm completely honest with you. That doesn't give us an accurate representation of the entire industry, which therefore does not give us a representation of how much of a industry hold or monopoly HYBE would potentially have. On that same vein, he then rolls into ticket prices. Once again, we are just coming out of a pandemic. Ticket prices are high across the board. That's not even just for K-pop. That is not even just within Korea. You have to bear in mind, all these artists are desperate to be on stage. There are only so many venues. Mind you, there are only really 3 big venues here in Korea. And then you have literally like 50 idols all trying to have their concert at the same time. Just to give you an example, last summer there were an exorbitant number of comebacks happening, and I actually was speaking to a manager of a girl group who are not that popular, shall we say, and they were talking about how right now for managers to get their idols spaces on Inkigayo, Music Bank, M Countdown, all that stuff, it's basically the same as concert ticketing. Like, there are so few spaces and there are so many idols trying to be on TV, trying to be in front of their fans, trying to have promotions now so that they can go and tour, so that they can have shows, so that they can have fan meets, because everybody has been waiting till the end of COVID to finally be active again. So of course, yeah, when there is that much demand for venues, what are venues going to do? They're going to up their prices. They're going to say, well, this idol is offering us this much. Can you beat the offer? They're giving us this % of their ticket share. Can you beat the offer? We're going to make this much from them. Can you beat that? And what is it going to do? It's going to create this bidding war where companies who can afford it, who know their fans are willing to spend the money, will say, we're going to do our ticket at this price because we know that our fans will sell at the stadium. We know the fans will come. We'll know you'll get your share. And it's a win-win for the venue, it's a win for the company, ultimately because they know they can sell the tickets. And the reality is smaller companies don't have that ability because they don't have that confidence that they'll be able to fill those same seats. Prime example, a very close friend of mine stands AB6. They're having a little bit of a come up in their popularity right now thanks to their appearance at K-pop Flex last year. She was telling me about how their fan meet tickets doubled in price from pre-COVID or during COVID to post-COVID. Same thing happened with TXT. Like, the concert ticket that we're getting right now is a good 50,000-60,000 one more expensive than the one we got last year. And I find it ironic that they're really comparing the prices of like a TXT ticket to a Super Junior ticket. No offense to Super Junior fans. You can't say that the pricing going up is purely the company's greed and ignore all the contextual information on why the prices are more expensive. And also you have to also look at when are these concerts happening? How much demand is there at that time of year? Or how many shows are there going to be? There's so many different things that could affect concert ticket price beyond company greed. Playing into the ignorance of the audience kind of statement where you're hoping people don't look too closely at what you're saying and just look at the number and say, yeah, I can see this line, it's below this line, so that's proof, that's enough for me. And then finally they round up with the employee survey. Now, I want to point something out. Did they not start this video by saying there were 600 SM employees? But let's look at this number that we have on screen. How many employees did they actually survey? Because if 85% is about 259 people, that means this survey is only about 300 people, right? Which is only half of your employees. That's not actually giving us a representation of what the majority think, because you did not even ask the majority, you asked half the people. So this is a majority of half the people, which is still ultimately only half. That's not to assume that all the other people who weren't included in this would have said yes, oh, we're all for HYBE coming in and taking over. The reality is that the majority is unknown. The actual opinions of the staff is unknown, which goes back to my question of when I was saying, who is SM in this video? Who are the people? Because they said it was the artist. We've yet to hear anybody's actual preferences. We've had a couple people go, this mess right now, but like for the most part nobody has said, oh yeah, I'm for Team HYBE, I'm for Team SM or anything. Especially when, mind you, if they were to say that, if they were to say, oh yeah, I'm all for HYBE, they would be painted as a traitor so quickly. But yeah, I digress. So they've yet to show us the artist perspective. From what we can see from their employee data, they have not actually shown us anything meaningful. Even the statement that comes to the end of this video from their employee council, or whatever it was called, is only 208 people out of the 600 they claim to have. So the majority of the employees are actually not spoken for at all in this video, even though they're trying to paint it as if the majority of the employees feel a certain way about everything. And then you also have to bearing in mind what I said about earlier, where when acquisitions happen, if there are conflicting teams in both companies, then there's a chance that SM employees could be fired. So there is also a good reason why some employees might be against this because they are not secure in their jobs. They are worried that they will lose their job security if HYBE come in and decide that their department is obsolete. They could be made redundant. So that is also a valid concern that some employees may have, but that's more so for a personal benefit than for the company's vision of being the number one blah 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 blah. You see my point? So all in all, you have to ask yourself, who is this video actually for? And I personally believe it is all optics. Optics is the way something is packaged so it can be perceived by someone who is considered an outsider. And by the way, that's you. That's me. It's the people who are not in SM, who are not on the shareholders boards. We are the fans. We are the outsiders in the situation because essentially we have no influence over the decision. However, I think that the reason SM is playing into the optics of addressing the fans, of giving enough information to seem like they have a point, but also not letting you understand the information by using big words and buzzwords and misleading graphs and stuff to paint a specific picture, is because they want the audience, they want SM's fans, who are generally for the most part confused by the situation, to feel a certain way without asking too many questions. If you look at the comments under this video, the majority of them just say, I want what's best for my artist, which shows that they're not even addressing what is actually being said in the video because most people don't get it. And that's what they're banking on. They're banking on people's ignorance, they're banking on people's lack of understanding, and they're banking that this video will highlight why HYBE is the demon, the devil by the window, if you will. If you're for SM and you're for SM artists, you're an SM fan, you're pink-blooded, then you're part of our group, you're going to be with us, you're going to side with us. And then later we're going to tell you why Kakao is great. They even said make your decision once we give more information on March 1st, but they've kind of already made a decision for you by putting out a video like this. If they really wanted you to make a fair decision, they would give you all the information for and against HYBE, for and against Kakao, everything about EC Man, all of it in one package that you could then go away, digest. Mind you, even the timeline they're giving for the information on SM 3.0 and all that stuff, it's supposed to be days before the deal with HYBE and EC Man is solidified. So they're really pushing fans to make a snap decision. And for me personally, I think the reason they're doing this is because they are going to do some sort of unofficial poll or like survey to determine what do the fans actually want. Because like I said, as of this point, they have actually yet to bring forward any evidence of what fans genuinely feel about the whole situation. So they're putting all this time and energy now into paying EC Man as the devil, into paying HYBE as the devil, and paying SM as the weak victims who are trying to keep the integrity and the identity of their company and do what's best for the shareholders and the employees and the artists and the fans. And I think there's something to be said about the order in which they say those things as well, because that shows priority. But ultimately, they are trying to lead fans into believing that HYBE is the bad choice, so that when they later do some sort of public survey or some opinion poll or something like that, they can then use it as evidence to say, we surveyed our employees, they are all against it. We surveyed our fans, they're all against it. I'm sure they will come out soon enough and say, we surveyed all our artists, they're all against it. And they're going to try and use that in whatever legal case they might go for. I don't know how it will be sorted out, honestly. I can see them trying to use that as like proof that everybody who is for SM is against HYBE. There is nobody who sees a grey area where SM and HYBE could potentially work out. It is either you're for us or you're against us. And personally, I think it might work, honestly. Genuinely, I appreciate if you've watched this far into this video. I know this is a fascinating topic, but I also know that myself being very openly a fan of BTS and TXT is going to make a lot of people who are fan of SM artists take my whole video and be like, this is trash, it doesn't mean anything, and be very apprehensive to listen to anything I said. And that's why I made that disclaimer at the beginning, that I am not for HYBE in this situation. I do not necessarily believe that HYBE acquiring any portion of SM is for the betterment of SM or the K-pop industry. I do not necessarily believe it's detrimental either. I just think we don't know. But yeah, that's been my opinion. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it helped. I hope it cleared some things up. I hope it wasn't too confusing. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Usually we do fun stuff over here. Although if you would like me to do more topical things like this, I mean, let me know. Your guys are always open to video suggestions. But yes, this has been Han from the Haniverse. Thank you so much for stopping by. And now I can sit down because I've been standing for an hour. Oh, my legs.